In this video, I'm going to be talking about Appendix E, which is in the very back of your textbook. And Appendix E deals with what we call dimensional analysis. So the first thing we should talk about is what is dimensional analysis. It goes by different names. Sometimes it's called the factor label method or the unit factor method, and some people might just call it conversions. A dimensional analysis is a problem-solving method that uses the fact that any number or expression can be multiplied by 1 without changing its value. It's a very useful technique and it's used in a variety of fields. So if you are a nursing major, if you intend on going into construction, if you have to take a chemistry class for your major, if you're doing engineering, physics, finance, economics, or accounting, you will have to use dimensional analysis at some point. So a couple of things before we get started. You want to have this handout printed out before we go through this video. So if you don't have it printed out and have it beside you, go ahead and pause this video and go print this handout out. This handout is available on D2L under the Content tab. You go to Unit 1 and it's under the section called Blank Notes. Now, very important, you are allowed to use this handout on our first quiz. So make sure that you have this printed out before you go try to take quiz number 1, because you will not be able to access it during the quiz. The Respondus lockdown browser that we use for our quizzes will make it to where you cannot open up another window during your test. So make sure you have this printed out or you copy it down onto a sheet of paper if you don't have access to a printer before you get started. Let's look at our first example. We're going to start with an easy example that you could probably do without dimensional analysis. Here we have convert 9 feet to inches. So here's how you start a problem with dimensional analysis. You start with the unit that you're trying to convert, and we're going to work our way down or work our way over to the units that we want to end up with, which is inches. So we're going to start with 9 feet. Now, in order for dimensional analysis to work, everything needs to be in the form of a fraction. So an easy way to convert a whole number to a fraction is just to write it over 1. So that's how we always start. Now we're going to look at our handout and see where we need to get our unit conversions from. Right, so this is the area that I'm looking at. It says lengths. So it says that 1 foot is the same thing as 12 inches. So inches is what we're trying to end up with. So let's use that conversion. We're trying to cancel out feet. So in order for that to work, we need to put feet in the denominator. So we're going to multiply by 12 inches over 1 foot. Then you cancel out the matching units. Feet matches with foot, so cancel those out. Now in the numerator, you're left with the units of inches, which is what we wanted to end up with. So you don't need to convert any further. You're done. The last thing you need to do is just multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. 9 times 12 is 108 inches, so make sure you include those units in there. And in the denominator, 1 times 1 is 1. So 108 divided by 1 is just 108. So 9 feet is the same thing as 108 inches. Let's look at the next example, which deals with units that maybe you're not as familiar with. So the next example says convert 6 centimeters to inches. So once again, we're going to start with 6 centimeters divided by 1, since that's what we're trying to convert. We want to end up in inches. So if you look at the picture that I've put at the top right-hand corner, it says that 1 inch is the same thing as 2.54 centimeters approximately. So, or actually 1 inch is exactly 2.54 centimeters, excuse me. So let's multiply by the conversion factor. We're trying to cancel out centimeters, so centimeters needs to go in the bottom. So we have multiplied by 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters. This is going to allow us to cancel our matching units of centimeters and then multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. We don't need to convert any further because we are down to inches, which is what we wanted to be in. So if you multiply across the top, 6 times 1 is 6. Multiply across the bottom, 1 times 2.54 is 2.54. The last thing you need to do is just plug this in your calculator. 6 divided by 2.54 is 2.36 inches. So 6 centimeters is the same thing as 2.36 inches. And I've rounded to 2 decimal places here. You could continue on to 3 or 4 decimal places if you wanted to. Our next example is convert 16 pounds to ounces. So we're going to start with 16 pounds over 1. I've included the picture of the area of your handout that I'm looking at. It says that 1 pound is the same thing as 16 ounces. So let's multiply by that conversion factor. So we're multiplying by 16 ounces over 1 pound. I've put pounds in the denominator so that I can cancel my matching units. So now that I'm down to ounces, I don't need to multiply by anything else. The last thing I need to do is just multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. So I don't need to include any other conversion factors. Multiplying across the top, 16 times 16 is 256 ounces. And 1 times 1 is 1. So 256 divided by 1 is the same thing as 256 ounces. So 16 pounds is the same thing as 256 ounces. Our next example is actually not on that handout. This is just some conversions that you'll have to have memorized. So it says convert 50 milliliters to liters. Right, so anything having to do with like centimeters, millimeters, deciliters, any of that kind of stuff you'll want to have memorized in case that comes up on the quiz. So here we have convert 50 milliliters to liters. We're starting with 50 milliliters over 1. Now what you'll need to know is that in 1 liter there are 1,000 milliliters. Alright, so we're going to multiply by the conversion factor of 1 liter divided by 1,000 milliliters. This way I can cancel my matching units. Now that I'm in liters, I don't need to convert any further. I just need to multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. So 50 times 1 is 50. 1 times 1,000 is 1,000. And so I just need to divide 50 divided by 1,000. That gives me 0.05 liters. So 50 milliliters is the same thing as 0.05 liters. Now, there are lots of different ways that you can do these problems. You don't have to use dimensional analysis. This is just the way that makes the most sense to me. But if you know a different way, or if it makes sense to you to do this a different way, then you're more than welcome to do these in whatever way that makes the most sense to you. Now we're going to get into the more complicated examples. The first example here says convert 40 miles per hour to feet per hour. So this is one of the special cases in dimensional analysis where you don't necessarily always start with a number over 1 like we've been doing so far. And the reason that we don't start with a number over 1 is because miles per hour is a rate. So that means that it involves 2. Now we've come to our last example, which is to convert 6 gallons to fluid ounces. This is not a rate like it was in the last example. It's not gallons per second or gallons per minute. It's just a simple conversion of converting 6 gallons to fluid ounces. So we're just going to start with 6 gallons over 1. Now I'm pulling up the part of the handout that you should be referencing during this problem. If you notice that near the bottom it says that 1 gallon is the same thing as 4 quarts. So let's multiply by that conversion factor. That's going to get us one step closer to fluid ounces. So I'm multiplying by 4 quarts over 1 gallon. This is going to allow me to cancel out my matching units of gallons. Now let's look back at the part of the handout that we're referencing. It says that 1 quart is the same thing as 2 pints. That's going to again get us closer to fluid ounces. So let's multiply by that conversion factor. That's going to be 2 pints over 1 quart. Quarts are going to cancel, so cancel those matching units. And then our last conversion factor that we need to multiply by, it says that 1 pint is the same thing as 16 fluid ounces. So put pints in the denominator, so it'll cancel with pints in the numerator. So 16, we're multiplying by 16 fluid ounces over 1 pint. Cancel out the pints. And we're done. We are down to fluid ounces, which is what we wanted to have in our answer. So the last thing you need to do is just multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. So in the top we have 6 times 4 times 2 times 16, which is 768. And in the bottom we have all ones. So 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. That leaves us with 768 fluid ounces. Now there are lots of other videos on dimensional analysis if you need extra practice. So all you would need to do is just go to YouTube and search dimensional analysis. You may see a lot of problems that deal with chemistry or engineering or nursing. Those are perfectly fine for you to watch if you need extra practice. I also have included a handout that has some extra problems on it if you would like.